The rope goes tight before you hear it. A low, rising whine, like a bow being drawn too far. Then the ground moves under the men at the bottom of the slope, and everyone who knows what that means is already running. If the dangerous craft of building history's most devastating siege machines fascinates you, subscribe now. What these timber yards produce will decide whether an entire kingdom falls. The tree's not ready. Oswin said so 20 minutes ago, pressing his palm to the bark the way he always does, feeling the grain, the sap still moving. Not ready. But the quota board says different, so the rope went on anyway, and now it's singing at a pitch that means something's about to give. The haul rigging, the anchor stake, or the man at the downhill end who can't get clear fast enough.
They got him clear.
This time. This is the timber yard at Ty Mar, Lower Snowdon, autumn 1282. This is where Edward I's Welsh campaign actually begins. Not at the castle walls, not at the battle lines, but here, in the dark, under the trees, in the mud and the cold, with men trying to take a mountain apart faster than the mountain wants to let them. My name is Aldrich Swan. I run the timber operation for the King's Siege Train. Let me show you what it actually takes. Edward I is building a conquest, and conquest at its base level is a logistics problem. The king's architects have planned the machines, trebuchets, mangonels, battering frames. His treasury has opened, but none of it moves without timber. Oak and ash in lengths up to 40 feet, strong enough to absorb the shock of a counterweight release, light enough that men can carry the framed pieces over mountain ground. The forests around Snowdonia carry good timber. The Welsh had been working these stands for generations, taking what they needed, leaving the rest to grow. The English crown, on a military deadline, doesn't have the luxury of patience. We're not harvesting, we're stripping. The operation runs in 3 stages. My crews handle the first, felling and extraction, getting raw timber from the hillside to the river. Second, floating it downstream to Rhuddlan, where it's tallied and sorted. Third, the workshop carpenters at Carnarvon turning raw wood into machines. The main trebuchet arm wants to be a single piece of oak, 40 feet long with no major knots along the tension face. Finding that tree on a hillside the Welsh have already selectively harvested, with a commissioner at the wood's edge and a deadline behind him, that's the work. My timber scaler, Oswin Draper, finds the trees. 30 years in this trade. He walks the slope before dawn, pressing his palm to the bark of candidates, reading what the wood says, the sap, the grain, the hidden tensions from decades of growing on a lean. Take a wound tree wrong, and you've got 40 feet of compressed stress waiting to unwind. In a machine frame under load, it'll fail.
Green timber wants to be green. You can work it, but you're working against it. Give it a season in the dry and it tells you the truth. Rush it and it tells you nothing until it breaks.
The Royal Commissioner, Reginald de Croft, arrived on the 4th morning with 3 scribes and the kind of expression that means the numbers he'd been shown don't match what he expected. He walked the yard, counted the stacked trunks, compared the count to his wax tablet, and said nothing for a full minute.
The Rhuddlan shipment has arrived. That is correct, my lord. Good.
Then he doubled the quota.
Operations immediately. Swan's numbers are acceptable. The crown requires the road to bear the weight. It will bear the weight.
40 trunks a week. We'd brought in 18 the week before. 40 meant working the upper slopes and running the winch road at double capacity. I asked for 2 more days to reinforce the road anchors. De Croft looked at me the way you look at a man who said something that doesn't merit a response, and told me the 40 trunk figure was achievable. He was right, it was achievable. That was exactly the problem.
He's not from here, is he?
Llywelyn ap Bryn said it flat, looking at the quota numbers, then back at me. He's Welsh, one of the few in this camp who knows these slopes the way the trees know them. He hired on because the alternative was fighting the king's army. 3 words and he walked back to his axes. I looked at the numbers. I looked at my crews. I told myself I was a fair man, that I knew the difference between pushing men hard and pushing them past breaking. I could hit 40 trunks without crossing that line. I was right about 40 trunks. I was wrong about the line. Let me tell you about scarfing, because it's where the real engineering starts, and because understanding it will help you understand the choice that came next. A trebuchet arm is a single lever. One end carries the counterweight, lead, stone, or iron, sometimes 300 pounds or more. The other carries the sling. When the counterweight drops, the arm rotates and the sling whips through an arc of roughly 270 degrees, releasing the projectile at the peak. The mathematics are simple, the material isn't. Scarf joint is an angled splice connecting two shorter pieces into an effective single length. Cut at 7 or 8 degrees off perpendicular, fitted with draw pins of hard wood driven across the grain. Done right, it transfers load almost as efficiently as solid wood. The carpenters inspect every joint before each firing. That's the safety margin built into the design. Green timber complicates this. The sap in the joint face means the surfaces don't seat cleanly. The carpenters pack with oak wedges, drive the pins harder, recheck every joint after the first test firing. When new timber arrives off the river, they press their thumbs into the end grain, feel the moisture, and make a sound I've learned to stop asking about.
They didn't say it'd be this much wood in woodworking.
Sonard is 16 and thinks he's being quiet. Oswin heard him from 20 feet away and laughed. A short, real one, the kind Oswin doesn't produce often. Then he went back to work.
Almost there. God be praised.
The winch road is how timber gets from the upper slopes to the river. It was cut by Welsh loggers 2 generations ago, a track wide enough for a sled haul, with anchor posts set into the hillside at the sharpest bends. The Welsh built it well. They used it for controlled extraction, one sled at a time, men stationed at each anchor to manage the rope on the steep sections. We were running 2 sleds. The road's main danger is the middle section, where the slope sharpens and the track crosses a clay shelf. Dark, cold clay, 8 inches deep, sitting on fractured shale beneath. In dry weather, the clay gives good grip. In November, on the lower Snowdon slopes, it turns slick. A loaded sled will try to slide sideways. Off the edge there, the drop is 30 feet onto broken stone. Oswin had walked the road 3 times before I asked for his assessment. He pressed his palm to the ground on the clay shelf, the way he presses his palm to bark, feeling for what the surface says beneath the obvious. He said the road wasn't right for 2 sleds under full load. The anchor posts in the middle section needed rebedding. 2 days' work.
2 days. Then it's solid. Run it now. You're gambling on whether the weather holds.
I looked at the quota board, I looked at the date, I looked at Oswin, and I told him to run it anyway. That's the thing about this kind of decision. It's not dramatic. You look at the numbers, do a calculation that says the odds are probably fine, and give an order. The order sounds like dozens of others you've given. The only difference is what you know underneath it, what you're not saying out loud. What I wasn't saying was this. 3 days earlier, I'd stood in de Croft's tent at Rudlin while he showed me his ledger. He'd been recording my extraction figures in a column labeled Standard Output, Snowdonian Forest Operation. Not my operation, the operation. He was benchmarking me. The numbers I'd hit by driving my crews harder, cutting preparation margins, running the slopes wet, those numbers were going to follow this campaign into the next one. Every timber foreman who came after me would be held to the standard I was setting.
You've shown what can be done when a man applies himself properly to the work. The Treasury appreciates competence. It's a quality worth rewarding.
He meant a permanent commission, salaried, secure, the thing I came here for. I went back to the timber yard and told Oswin to run the road. He looked at me a long time. Not angry, just measuring. The same look he gives a tree he's not sure about. Then he picked up his tools and walked toward the winch road, and I watched him go, and I didn't call him back. The counterweight for a trebuchet of the size Edwards engineers specified was a wooden box, roughly 6 feet on each side, fitted with iron corner bracing and filled with lead sheet and dressed stone. 420 pounds. The carpenters at Caernarvon built it from seasoned elm brought overland from Chester. Dovetail joints at the corners, blind pegged through the face, lead-cocked iron bolts. 4 days. 3 carpenters who didn't sleep much. The machine itself went up in a sequence refined over a generation of English siege campaigns. First, the base frame. 6 oak sleepers laid in pairs, cross-braced with iron straps, leveled on packed rubble. The uprights go in next. 2 posts mortised into the sleepers and braced with angled knees. The axle sits between the uprights in hand-fitted iron bearings. The arm goes on last. 42 feet of scarfed and pinned oak, balanced at roughly 1/3 from the counterweight end. The smell of the workshop clearing was fresh cut wood, hide glue, and the sharp iron scent of bolts being driven. The carpenters moved with the quiet efficiency of men who've done this enough that they don't need to talk. Sinard moved between them running materials. Iron pins, wedge stock, rags, and tallow to grease the axle bearings. Learning by watching, which is the only way you learn woodwork of this quality. On the second day of assembly, a man didn't come back from the winch road. His name was Bjorn, felling hand from Cheshire, 31 years old, conscripted by royal warrant, a name on a list. A man who didn't have enough standing to say no. He was at the downhill end of the second sled haul when the clay shelf let go. The sled went sideways. The rope caught him across the back and threw him into the road edge. He didn't fall 30 feet. The road held him, but a 40-foot trunk in motion doesn't stop when it catches a man. He lived. He didn't walk right after. I heard about it from Hewell, who came to find me at the workshop clearing with the flat expression of a man delivering information he's not going to editorialize. He said the old Welsh loggers wouldn't have run the haul in wet ground. Then he walked away. I understood what he meant. He'd known about the clay shelf. He hadn't said anything because I hadn't asked the right question, and by the time Oswin tried to stop it, the decision was already made. That evening, de Croft came to the workshop clearing to inspect the assembly. He looked at the frame, the arm, the counterweight box in its rigging sling. He asked the head carpenter 2 technical questions about the axle tolerances. Satisfied. Then he turned to me and said that given our output under difficult conditions, he'd be submitting my name to the Treasury for a permanent commission. He put his hand out, I took it. If you want to understand what the finished machine actually did and what it cost to build it, you'll want to stay until the end. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the arm comes down. Reginald de Croft stood at the edge of the clearing while the arm was cocked back for the first time. 420 pounds fighting gravity, held by a wooden latch pin. Everyone stood back. De Croft gave the signal. The pin was pulled. The counterweight dropped. The arm came up. The test stone, dressed limestone about 30 pounds, flew clean through the gray November sky and struck the earthen mound 60 yards out. The impact threw dirt and turf in every direction. The machine worked perfectly. Everything I'd pushed my crews to build. On time, at speed, under pressure. It worked. I stood there with the smell of fresh-cut oak still in my nose, and Bjorn not walking right somewhere behind me, and Oswin gone. He'd taken his measuring rod and left the camp the morning after I'd overridden him, and de Croft already turning to his scribe, already writing down the results. The trebuchet worked. I felt nothing I could name. Edward I's trebuchets were deployed against the Welsh mountain strongholds in December. The largest could throw a 300-pound stone roughly 200 yards with acceptable accuracy. Medieval siege accuracy is a strange concept. You don't aim a trebuchet at a specific stone in a specific wall. You aim at a section of wall repeatedly and let accumulated impact do the work. Each throw fractures the mortar a little further. Each strike opens a crack the previous stone started. The wall fails not all at once, but progressively. Hairline fractures becoming structural failure, becoming a gap wide enough to breach. I was there for the third day of firing against the stronghold. My timber work was done, my operation closed, my quota met. De Croft's commendation was already sealed. I went because I wanted to see it. Or I thought I did. Standing on that cold hillside, watching the machine I'd helped build throw 300-pound stones into a wall 200 yards away, I kept expecting to feel something clean, pride, the particular pleasure a craftsman gets when a finished thing works as intended. I'd felt that before, watching a well-built road take its first heavy load, something in the gut that says, yes, that's right. I didn't feel it. The machine worked. The wall cracked. The stronghold fell within the week. These are facts. Built to a standard I had demonstrated was achievable. Howell ap Bryn watched the last day of the siege from a ridge above the valley, not saying anything to anyone. I saw him up there but didn't go up. I don't know what I would have said. After the stronghold submitted, I went back to Time Hour to collect the last of my equipment. The felling site was stripped, not clear-cut exactly, but gutted. The large straight timber was gone. What remained were the young trees, the crooked ones, the ones too small or too damaged to be useful. In another generation, they'd grow into a serviceable forest again, or they wouldn't. I found the stump of the first main-arm oak we'd taken, the tree Oswin had selected, pressed his palm to, called sound, 42 feet tall at felling, maybe 80 years old judging by the ring count, tight rings in the young years, wider as the tree found its height, tight again in the drought years, wide again in the good decades. Over the top of the rings, pressed deep into the cut face, was de Croft's tally mark. A single stroke and a cross, the king's property mark. It covered the outermost rings, the last 20 or 30 years of the tree's life, the same way a deed covers the memory of a field. What came next was this. Brother Gervais's tallies, together with the Crofts benchmarks and the workshop records from the Carnarvon carpenters, became the operational standard for English royal siege supply. The timber extraction methods we'd developed, the river float system, the two-stage workshop process, the chain of supply from forest to frame, were documented and replicated in subsequent campaigns. English siege engineering got faster and more logistically reliable because of what we'd worked out under pressure in these Snowdon timber yards. That's the metamorphosis. Not in one man, not in one machine, in the whole structure of the craft. What the struggle cost, what it cost Bjorn, what it cost Oswin, what it cost the hillside at Team Hour, is a separate accounting. Both things are true at once. Oswin took a private commission near Delamere, repairing mill machinery for a wool merchant who paid on delivery and didn't ask for speed. He never came back to royal work. I didn't either after that winter. The commission de Croft wrote was for one campaign. I let it expire. The tree doesn't know it's in a hurry. That's what de Croft said. That's why we are. I understand now what the tree knows. It knows that rushing always costs something. It carries the record of both in its rings. Every good year and every hard one, laid down honest, in sequence, in grain. The ring that carries the tally mark doesn't lie about what year it is. It just carries the mark too. Both things recorded, both things real. Edward I conquered Wales. The siege workshops along the Conwy built the machines that made it possible. The timber came from Snowdon. The price came from the men who cut it. If you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel. There's more in this workshop.